welcome to Jisc's Beyond the Technology podcast. In this special episode, we're recording live at Digifest 2024. I'm Tom Moule, Senior AI Specialist in Jisc's AI team, and I'm thrilled to be joined by David Pike, who is Head of Digital Learning at the Academy for Learning and Teaching Excellence at the University of Bedfordshire, Alina Bajgrowicz, Digital Learning Officer, also from the University of Bedfordshire, and Scott Hayden, Head of Teaching and Learning and Digital at Basingstoke College of Technology. Today, we're going to be chatting about ethics and empathy in AI. So welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining me. So could I just start by asking you each to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Scott. I'm the Head of Teaching and Learning at Basingstoke College of Technology. So that means I look after our digital team, who are comprised of student digital leaders who've grown up to become part of our team at the college, supporting all students and staff, and our brilliant learning coaches. And we observe and coach, and in doing so, get to empathise with the user, as it were, and see what the teachers need. So I look after learning coaches and learning technologists, and we are the teaching and learning team at the college.
Fantastic, thank you.
Right, hello everyone. I'm David. I work with Alina at the University of Bedfordshire. I'm Head of Digital Learning, so almost like my colleague here, I'm the digital face of the teaching and learning part of the university. We've got a lot of different students in a lot of different places. I think around about 18,000 students spread around the world and also in the UK. And we've got lots of our campus in Luton is very multicultural, so you can walk around and hear lots of different people talking lots of different languages. It's very good. But we are a widening participation institution, so we do take students who come to us with a lot of challenges, but looking for opportunity. I think that's quite important for us as well. So this is an extremely relevant and important conversation about how we can help our students be, well, it's the best possible version of themselves, really.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Alina. I've joined David's team a little less than a year ago as a digital learning officer. And mainly my role is to support different VLEs within the institution, and also recently been looking into different projects on how AI is affecting or shaping the environment in our institution.
Brilliant, thank you. I'd like to ask next, could you tell me a little bit about how you're using AI in your institutions and what ethical questions have been raised? We'll go with Scott again first.
Yeah, so, because it is so nuanced and complex, the ethical question of it, we parked working with students using generative AI, is the truth. We just thought we'll come to that later, because it was just a bit much. So in June of 2023, we turned on Google Gemini for all staff and said, for lesson planning, resource creation, as a thought partner, you've got this personal assistant, of which you must always be skeptical, of course, but we had curriculum training for all staff to show them how they can use this deliberately, mindfully, and intentionally. So for staff, Google Gemini and things like Canva and Teachermatic were used and have been used at scale through our institution. So only at this point of the year, I mean, literally February, March, have we started to confront the issue of working with students in the classroom with it, because while they're using it in their personal lives, like Snapchat AI, Perplexity, Pi.ai, that we know they're doing it, the ambiguity around the guidance as to the do's and don'ts of under 18-year-olds, which in FE I'm working with primarily, has meant that I've only been dipping my toe, Tom, is the truth, with consenting adult learner groups who have been able to be these little mini prototypes with which I can iterate and try new things. And we've seen wonders, in terms of great referencing, creative videos, images and audio projects, and time management enhanced across so many different subjects, students using it with a bit of guidance from us, but only in those controlled prototypes. What I really want is to be able to use it with 16 to 18-year-olds without worrying about making any mistakes and getting it wrong from an ethical perspective. So I need guardrails. I think we all do, really, when it comes to the ethics. So to answer your question, sorry, I'm a bit of a long-winded answer, but really, with us, it's been teachers first, giving evenings and weekends back for teachers, primarily, and only now am I starting to think about, okay, well, better get to the student side of it now, which we're doing in controlled, consenting prototypes.
Fantastic, thank you.
So we had a kind of a slightly different issue. For us, AI landed like a big bang, just sort of on the table in front of everyone. Here's AI, everybody. I think in some ways we didn't expect things like OpenAI to take off quite so quickly and to be quite so readily available. And it was a lot. There were a lot of questions from colleagues. You can kind of split them into three groups. One is, oh no, what's this? This is going to be terrible. All the way through to don't ever use AI. It's completely illegal. Some people actually said that's very strange. And then the kind of middle ground where some people said, wow, this is really cool. And then there's another smaller group like, I don't know what to do. And actually, I don't know what to do was probably the biggest group. So for Alina and I, one of the biggest challenges was getting everybody together to show them what the system does, because what the systems do, but like Gemini as it is now. But just saying to them, it's okay to try it. That's what it's there for. You should try it. A few braver people, because not everyone wanted to, they were quite afraid of it. They actually went ahead and tried it with the students. That's great. That's what we should do. So, if you're talking about ethics, I suppose we're going to, Alina and I talk about this later on, but, I think it's Aristotle. Probably want to cut this one out of the podcast. I've got it wrong, though. Ethics is something to be practiced. So it's okay to muck around, try things, do it wrong. But at the same time, we've got to be very aware for the students that not all of our students are experts in UK education systems. They come from other places where, Alina can tell you about what it's like to come from a foreign country, come to England, and suddenly you know English a bit like I've lived abroad as well. You think you know a language, but you don't. And that's a very tough and brave transition for the students to make. But at the same time, if you're going to get a degree from a UK university, you've got to abide by the rules. And that's kind of what you're saying about the ethical point. That's where it becomes really tricky, because what's the right and the wrong thing to do? And how should or could or might you bend and break the rules? Yeah, they're damn difficult questions. I think they perplex the students a bit and the staff equally. But that's the idea of education, right? It should be about thinking about these big, terribly difficult questions. And in a lot of ways, this reminds me of anyone listening to this, to those of us who are experienced enough to remember, I've given up saying people have got been doing this a long time, but think back to when Turnitin first arrived and how troublesome that was for colleagues and students, because suddenly we found that students were not operating by the rules that we expected. They may well be going off and copying and pasting things from places. So in a lot of ways, for me, there's a lot of parallels. So the arguments are different, but they're still in the same field almost. So it's interesting. We live in interesting times, as the saying goes. Yeah.
And just to add to that, what I found extremely challenging, especially with our students and our institution, is that in a diverse community, it's not just the aspect of the AI and current shape of the technology, it's also the background, there's the cultural things, aspects that come into that as well. And it's so many different things on the top of that AI boom kind of thing here. To consider that it's, I think the only option is to unpack it together, and I think remove ourselves from the position where we think that we know what it is and how it's going to affect you or student or your position or future, and really to sort of open that discussion and have that space to I don't know, let's unpack that together, let's look into that together.
I think that's a really good point, that these sort of ethical ideas include the cultural and social issues. And I know you spoke earlier, Scott, about, in your speech, in your talk earlier, about empathy in AI. Could you tell us a bit about why it's so important to have an empathetic approach in the context of AI in education?
Yeah, it's a tough question, Tom. But you're right. It's for us, it's everything. What happened really was the horizon scanning reports about World Economic Forum and Pearson, all these reports, they identified that these human skills that are more needed than ever in the future are that of compassion, critical thinking, communication, problem solving. And it's so abundantly clear that while we may not know, of course, what jobs are going to be available in 10, 20, 30 years, the skills we know what are more valuable and needed and crucial to develop in staff and students. So to that end, we realized in our strategy, which we wrote using AIs to help us, I turned my heroes into AIs so they could help me write my strategy for the college. it became clear that empathy has got to be at the heart of this. So to that end, we empathy map with our staff and students every day to make sure we're meeting their needs. And it become crucial to us with the advent of generative AI that we need to continuously think from the perspective of the user, the student who's like overwhelmed. Like Snapchat AI just popped up with that little green man who answers any of your questions. Do I use it? Do I talk to it? Is it naughty to talk to this person to help with the referencing? Do I use ChatGPT? Do I go on Perplexity AI? All my friends are using it. Am I allowed to? Can I reference it? And only by empathizing with the student and realizing what they're thinking, did we realize that, this is overwhelming. We need to really help them and give them 3 prompts and 3 tools and some training around that. And for our teachers, similarly, it was abundantly clear from empathy mapping with them that we realized, they're overwhelmed as well. I'm guilty of giving them too many technological things because I get excitable about these things, as I'm sure you guys do as well sometimes, right? But the fact is, we realized with this that if we show them how to use this one tool and one prompt in their team meetings in June, then their planning for the next academic year could be done. So to take away the noise and to distill it down to this one thing, if you let me show it to you, I can give you evenings and weekends back potentially over the summer. And that was the in. And it all comes from empathy mapping with the user, the staff or student, and then in doing so, allowing them to see the potential of it. So empathy first. I know it's becoming a bit, I don't know, is it a tired term at this point? Maybe it is, I don't know, but I don't care either. That's the way we're moving forward, you know? We realise that if we don't care about staff and students, then we've lost sight. I'm a 41-year-old man who works in digital ed tech, so I'm going to like these things. But meanwhile, other people who are terrified and frightened might see things differently. I've got to shift my perspective to theirs.
Absolutely. And Alina, from your perspective, how has generative AI changed things for students?
It's definitely bringing a lot of advantage and disadvantages. And I think there are different institutions that definitely have similar things in common when it comes to the advantages. But I can share from my perspective as an international student, it seems to be great at the very beginning. The first time you approach generative AI, it seems like, oh my God, like, where have you been all my life, right? It seems like it generates just magic, and you become, it gives you the feeling that you can be so creative with using, with supporting yourself with this AI, and you can do so many different things. But then on the other hand, not many institutions, especially in our institution, feels like at the very beginning, at the early stage, that topic was not discussed with the student. We only recently started unpacking it together. So it's that barrier that you feel very intrigued. You feel like there's so many possibilities with using AI. We can do so many amazing things. But yet, it's still a taboo. It's still like probably not allowed, something that nobody wants to talk about because, and that's where it kind of gives you the idea, might be disadvantage to my assessment, to my work that I'm putting in university, and you don't want to sabotage that. You don't want to, sort of cross the line that nobody actually talks about because you don't really know where the line is.
That's anxiety-inducing for a student,
It really
right?
is. Absolutely. And on the top of that, just again, from my experience being an international student, you already have a lot of anxiety coming into that experience and thinking like everything that you've knew so far, you translate into different language, new language, and on the top of that, escalating to the level of academic writing, for example. It's scary, it's terrifying, and seems like the AI could be amazing in terms of supporting you through that journey, but then in the same time, it's really difficult to kind of say where is that line, what it's right and wrong, and I think a lot of students can refer to that as well, especially at our institution with diverse community that we have. They've highlighted many times. In fact, we've got students who, as soon as we sort of, start in the conversation about the generative AI, they'll be like, "It wasn't me." Turn around and run in a different direction. The students will be like, "Actually, it took me 2 months with generative AI, and I built my own computer at home." So we've got two opposites, and both gives us the basic kind of information about our student, and both very much needs to be addressed as well. I think it's important not to dismiss the advantage that some students are presenting and the practices that they've used in using generative AI in their academic journey, but also making sure that we're addressing the challenges that the students who kind of struggling with that topic, that we really coming forward and saying that it's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's look into it together. Let's see what we can do, what it's kind of like right and wrong sort of thing. Like, let's just, look at the bigger picture and let's take a problem on the board.
I think your point particularly there about defining that line between what are the discouraged ways of using it, but moreover, what are the encouraged ways of using generative AI is really important. And I think that's a really good challenge for us as a sector to define that, to reduce that hesitancy and that sort of feeling of being naughty that you were talking about earlier. So David, your session and yours and Alina's session this afternoon is going to look at some of the ethical dilemmas around generative AI. And you've already brought up Aristotle. So can we go into a bit of depth about what some of these dilemmas are?
Yes, of course, I think just say two wonderfully made points there, particularly about empathy. That's extremely important for students, but also about rules as well. And that's really what we wanted to explore with the students, because ethics are difficult and they mean different things to different people. People confuse ethics and morals. I won't go into the difference here because it'll take too long. But anyway, suffice to say, what we wanted to do with the dilemmas was present students with situations where we weren't talking about what they did. That scary thing you were just talking about, what you said about empathy and what you said about rules. So it's always better sometimes for people to talk about something which isn't them. But my friend has a problem. So with these dilemmas, we set little scenarios. So there are two, they come in pairs. So one's called Jordan, one's called Dave. Now the Dave one is actually kind of true to life if you get to see it. So in Jordan's case, Jordan's always done a brilliant job of doing his assignments, always got A grades, real high-flying student. Then suddenly one day, bang, Jordan's failed. You can't believe it. What's he going to do? He's got a problem. He's got 3 days before his assignment's due. Now that's something, I don't do anything at the last minute. Anyone listen to this, but we've all been there, right? We all do things at the last minute, and that's something that students experience. Now, for someone who's always done well and failed suddenly, there's probably a temptation there to go to something, or you might go to someone and ask for advice. So I wanted to unpack just really quickly with the students, and Alina did a brilliant job with this. Just ask them, should Jordan use an AI system to help him rewrite his assignment? He can feed in all the feedback and do all that, and it will do it for him. So, but on the other hand, you then got Dave. Now, Dave's always failed. This is like my first degree, this one. And really struggling. Same problems. 3 days to go, going to fail another assignment. Are you more likely to be sympathetic with Jordan or more sympathetic with Dave? So this is where it starts to come into play, that problem that you both described, with the what do you do? If you follow the rules and you genuinely did that, are you going to do better than somebody who doesn't follow the rules, who might use AI inappropriately? And it's really hard because for the students, there's an intrinsic advantage using AI, right? They think it's answered the question, it speaks like an authority, it looks authoritative, it gives really good answers. Unless you start questioning it, you might not find out, it could be telling you might not be telling you the truth. So there's that kind of critical element too. But for the students, what we're trying to get across to them was, actually, first of all, you may well find your friends or yourself in this position, right? And it's okay. This happens. That's life. That's what learning is difficult, right? With your empathy thing, empathize with those people. What's it like to be in that position? There's a lot to be said for that. And I think that's the basis of a lot of conversations that you can have with students about, strip that back, go back a step. What could have Jordan done differently? What could have Dave done differently? In what way could the university have helped Dave or Jordan differently? So some really big, useful questions. But really, Alina and I just wanted to kind of just scratch the surface a little bit because, we've got all the kind of I'll just say the chaos of AI, right, for staff and for students. And how do you start to just even take the students' pulse, see how they feel. What do they think? Why are they thinking that way? What would they do? Could you do anything differently? And surprisingly, most of the students, you'll see this later, kind of sit on the fence and they don't know. But it's also saying it's okay to sit on the fence if you don't know. That's okay. Sometimes saying I don't know is more powerful than making it up or, fake news, if you like, those kind of things, all those kind of tropes that are around. So that's the base of it. So in pairs, and flipped from different perspectives. And, there's a lot of complicated ways you can look at them, but the idea is to make it simple enough to have a 10-minute conversation. And that's what we went for. 10-minute conversation, and you'd be surprised how fast students come over when you've got ping pong balls, sweets, and stationery. Mostly stationery, actually, but that's the idea. Start a conversation. It's okay to talk about it. It's not, don't hide from it. Chat, be honest, say what you're thinking and feeling. Yeah.
Excellent. And I suppose that leads on to the next question that I had, which is about this balancing act that we have between the idea that generative AI can be hugely empowering for students in terms of how it can help them interface with information, help them shape their ideas, help them produce incredible works. There's also the question of whether it could create a sort of culture of reliance, and that actually students could become to depend on that. I'll change the order up a bit. Alina, where do you think in terms of, do you think we should be excited about the opportunities for empowerment? Do you think that that we should be worried about over-reliance? Where do you think you sit on that balancing act?
That's a really good question. I think it's going to be really difficult for me to answer because I think I'm representing a little bit of both, and I think each of us has that little bit of both from time to time. But I think the only constant in this whole topic is change, and I think throughout the history has been proven that we can have our opinion. We can be more, fear the topic, embrace the topic. It's completely down to us, but we cannot avoid it. I think it's inevitable. It's definitely sort of, it's out here. It's definitely making, it's showing its face more firmly every day. And if we not gonna put our hand on the top of that, or at least try to sort of, put our hand somewhere in that topic, we might just miss out on the opportunity to learn, I guess, right? It's not just to, predict the future or, overthink what's going to happen, but just really embrace the moment and see what are the opportunities here with what we have so far. So I think, a little bit maybe from my experience as a student, I think the AI, actually generative AI, came at the very end of my study. So I've only kind of touched that topic a little bit, but in my academic writing, but I can see how it can be tempted to use it in the wrong way. But then in the same time, I felt like nobody took me in my journey and said, Alina, it's okay. Let's look into it together. You can do this, you cannot do that, or you should use this way, not necessarily that way. So nobody done that with me. That's why personally, I feel like I've always had that fear of the generative AI. I would just rather leave it on its own, just be there, nowhere near my work, because I don't want to, sabotage all my effort that I've put so far. But in the same time, being in digital learning team, I can see the other side of it. And so now I think my position changed slightly to embracing it. Because as you see from this event, it's definitely here to stay. It's progressing very fast. And as you've mentioned before, it's implemented in different apps, different streaming applications that we're using, not even knowing that the AI is there, but it just never shown its face in such a form as it is now. So sooner we're going to get our head around it, I think it's just going to be more beneficial for us, for your personal development.
Brilliant, thank you. Scott, you talked about deepfakes in your talk earlier, and you also showed ways in which the same technology can be used in a really empowering way. Could you talk a little bit about how you're approaching deepfakes, or some of the ideas that you found particularly inspiring there?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do you mind if I circle back to something Alina said?
Absolutely, yeah, please do.
I think, in terms of over-reliance of students using generative AI, I think we've got to rethink assessment. I think this is such a unique opportunity for us to completely rethink assessment. And so, for example, I had a student last year called Camilla, and her final project was she's an ESOL learner as well, international learner. And her project was going to be doing an illustrated book cover for her creative project, right? Nice project. But then generative AI happened. So that, well, she then was supercharged with this toolkit, and she then created an interactive virtual Bible study for the story of Genesis, where she brought to life every single character from the story of Genesis using Midjourney, animated their mouths, had them talking and interacting in a 360 ThingLink environment, which her church have been using, and 150 people have gone through that experience. So what was a book cover as a project became a mini universe.
Wow.
So in terms of generative AI and the worry about over-reliance of it, I think this supercharges and enhances. And her research, her development, her iterations, her process was evidenced so beautifully in a way that an essay could never capture. We need to rethink assessment. Vlogs, podcasts, witness statements, professional discussions, sites, vivas, whatever it might be. Anyway, I had to say that, sorry. Deepfakes.
Yes, please.
Deepfakes. So our principal, Hey Jen, that thing that went viral a year ago where you can take someone's video and then have them translated. Yeah. We translated them into Ukrainian, Polish, and talked to our refugee and ESOL learners. And it was good. Everyone around the college saw it, and it was good because they know Anthony can't speak those languages. But they got them thinking, well, how did they do that? And then that led to us having conversations in tutorials about pre-bunking. And basically, we're inoculating our students against the inevitable deepfakes that are coming. Trying to give them the antibodies to challenge and to be prepared and strong enough to deal with the wave of fakery that's inevitably coming their way. So we're making a series of videos, images, and text posts for our students so they can scrutinize and be critical of, is this real, isn't this real? Did Anthony say this, their principal, or didn't he say this? So when they start to see, and they will see it in 2024, the year of the election, all sorts of deepfakes coming our way, they'll be a bit more skeptical and critical, we think. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to be proactive, like the great Minister of Digital Affairs, Audrey Tang, in Taiwan does. She released videos of herself before the election this year. So the Taiwanese were, as she describes it, inoculated against the deep fakes that were coming her way. They got through their election without any trickery derailing things. I think there's something to be said for us in FE and HE being proactive about pre-bunking, as it were.
Excellent. I think that's really good. And I know you've got some resources available on that, which people might find really useful to help them learn how to assess the validity of these outputs that are, as you say, definitely coming our way with two big elections coming up. David, so Scott mentioned previously about how this debate about reliance and over-reliance should help inform our approach to assessment. Where do you think assessment is likely to be heading in the age of AI?
I think the issue for me is, of course, a classic politician's answer here, it depends. It depends which area you're talking about. I mean, the issue for me is thinking about, say, a medic or a nurse. There are certain things that we'd expect them to better do versus someone who may be in the entertainment industry. So I think the issue with reliance is, it's actually a bit like you say, so it's the focus on method, actually, for me. That's the important thing. How did you get there? What was the process? Now, for me, assessment-wise, I don't think it matters, what those things are, what the steps are, but the fact that you genuinely took those steps and we can look back together, or a student can reflect on it and look back on that and see how they got there.
Yes.
I think that's the balancing act for me, because AI is very good. You can throw lots of ideas at it, but like you said, you've got to take a critical view. You've got to look at that and decide, is that, perhaps to some extent, is that right or wrong, or is that a fair representation? And in some ways, I remember being told off as a kid for using a calculator, actually just slide rule or a piece of paper, right? So again, these arguments are not new ones, right? But it's about, if I took that away from you, could you still genuinely do that? Is that genuinely you doing it, or is it the AI system? So that's the kind of the intellectual balance, and there's something to be said for the intellectual exercise, not a word I often use, quite frankly, I don't run around enough, but that the act of exercising your brain and really trying, and learning's damn difficult. It's not easy. And I think that's the worry for me. It looks like a brilliant solution, which it is in many ways, but on the other hand, I'm kind of thinking, actually, does it detract from the actual act of experiencing it So learning is an experiential thing often, I mean, okay, different ways to describe it, but the act of trying to write your assessment, the act of finding it damn difficult to speak in, well, I try speaking Polish, I'm terrible at it, but the act of trying to talk in a foreign language, it's really genuinely hard. But so it's finding that balance, and I'm not sure myself, I'll be honest with everyone, I'm not sure that balance sits, because AI is coming tipped over the apple cart, but great, that's what the universe sometimes needs, that's what the world needs, tip the apple cart over, start again, do something interesting. That's very chaotic and intellectually destructive, but I think it's something to be said for that. Start thinking from a different perspective, start from scratch. Why is that like that? Why is it that way? Why not that shape? Why that shape instead? All those really fun questions that, of course, no one wants to answer on a Friday afternoon, of course, that kind of thing, But the long debates that you have with each other, and that's really what we should do. We don't spend a lot of time, like we're doing here, talking and discussing. And I think there's something wonderful in that action when you can do it with people from anywhere in the world and anywhere you want to. So, but I just worry that maybe AI will take some of those opportunities away and we'll come to rely on it rather than rely on each other.
That's really interesting. And Alina, have you seen any, or know of any examples where people have used generative AI in a really effective way as part of that process of learning to really enhance the process of learning and enhance the outputs of learning?
I think definitely just having a conversation with our students, there was definitely loads of examples where usage of generative AI brought a lot of positive impact on a student journey. One of the examples that I mentioned earlier, building its own computer at home, right? Also, something that I didn't recognize before is that it's patient. And only after I've heard that for the first time, I've realized, well, that applies to me as well. Sometimes we happen to be in a very stressful environment, as I've mentioned, for a lot of students like myself coming from overseas. To start the journey, it's extremely difficult. It's very stressful, and on the top of that, there are some elements of maybe a little embarrassment, thinking that home students probably got this advantage because English is the first language, mine it's not. So there's there's so many different things going through your head, and then there's this so peaceful sort of generative AI that could just patiently be there and explain it again and again and again in different words, in different ways. And, it wouldn't judge you. There's nobody to sort of, you don't have to face that, judgment or, so getting someone's opinion sometimes can be stressful as well. Putting yourself out there thinking is what they're going to think bad of me? Is that going to reflect my outcome of my assessment or my next classes? But here, it just seems like this digital environment, it's more, it has its own pace. From the outside, it looks like it's progressing very fast because it is. But then at the same time, it gives you this slow pace of support that you need specifically. It can tailor the support that you need exactly at the moment where you need it most. But then the question is how we use it. It's different, right? So a lot of students have used it in amazing ways. From my conversations with some, they translate a lot of different things as well. Sometimes it's just to put a long piece of text, for example, and just save up a little time on just to make it a little bit shorter and get some bullet points, for example. So there's lots of different ways, and I guess it's just depending on what you need at a certain time. But I think, as we notice, is the technology moving so fast, it's really important to at least try to create your digital persona in this world. So I'm not sure how yet. I didn't master that part. I'm still kind of using the system in a lot of different ways. Sometimes if you look at the history, I attempt to ask really silly questions as well. So the options are unlimited. It's just, it's all about trying and keep on sort of,
Fantastic. We've only got a minute left, so I'm just going to ask you to give us one takeaway that you would give to listeners on how they can use AI in a positive, ethical, effective, and just humanistic way. So Scott, one kind of bit of advice that you would give?
Simplifying like I'm 10 years old. That's the prompt that's probably the most universal that everyone sees the benefit of straight away. Simplify, insert brackets, whatever you want. explain it like I'm 10 years old. That's pretty useful and transferable. Makes people go, I see it.
Brilliant. David?
I agree with my right honourable colleague here. That's absolutely what I do too. It's okay to ask. I think that's the important thing. It's okay to ask an AI system.
Fantastic. And Alina?
From my side, I guess just make it fun. Have fun with it. Play around. Just get the feel like what is it? What does generative AI means to you? Not what everyone thinks what it is.
Nice.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to learn more about Digifest, please go to jisc.ac.uk/Digifest.